Hello and welcome to MLH Media Uncensored episode 3. We got a hell of an episode in store for all you folks here today. Really excited to be able to bring this program here to you guys all live and in person. Really excited for this show. Got Chiwiwiss, Carlos Figueroa joining the program a little bit later today. But first, we got to break down that matchup that went down this past weekend. Tatsuro Taira and Brandon Royval. I mean, if there was a potential for a fight of the night contender, let me just tell you folks, this was definitely up there because, oh my God, these kids, these guys, these flyweights turned into just absolute dogs. Like, if you were to tell me that these guys weighed 125 pounds beforehand, I would not have believed you because the way that they were moving around in there, it did not seem like a flyweight type fight, and it was a different type of energy for that one. I was actually watching it while I was at work. Congrats to Brandon Royval getting that split decision victory, but I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a I don't know how Sal D'Amato scored it for Tatsuro Taira. I know that he had the takedowns and so on and so forth, but I just really feel like Brandon Royval was having a really good time on the feet, and he was having a lot of success there. And I really think that overall, the title picture is kind of taken a complete detour over there in 125 because you previously had Tatsuro Taira, who is possibly going to match up with either Alexandre Pantoja in the future, or if Kai Sakura gets that win over Alexandre Pantoja, then the UFC has the potential to go to Japan and has this whole big layout. But Brandon Royval kind of put a stake into some of those plans, and I think that we may possibly be seeing either Royval face the winner of Moreno Abazi, or hear me out here, I think we could possibly see the man Brandon Royval, Raw Dog, gain a title shot in 2025 and him waiting it out. And I think honestly he does deserve it, especially after taking out a guy like Tatsuro Taira. And I mean, I know he's had those 2 losses to Pantoja, but at this point in the flyweight division, he's almost, I would say Pantoja is almost at that Demetrius Johnson-esque level. And I think that the more and more that we watch these fights and the more and more that we see these kind of flyweights play out, we'll really truly see how Pantoja's championship reign, how it will develop and how it will continue to seize into the future. And so let's just go ahead and take a look at the card overall. I mean, we had some absolute amazing fights on this one, and if you got to look at the main fights to highlight from this one, I definitely liked Grant Dawson. I mean, got a big win over Rafa Garcia, and he looked really good doing it. I mean, he's always been criticized for kind of not being the most exciting fighter, not being the most he's going to do this and that to you, but man, let me just tell you, he had one hell of a performance against Rafa Garcia. He looked really good in there. I mean, he was able to get Garcia down to the ground relatively pretty easy, and then just was able to finish him from there in the second. So congratulations to Grant Dawson getting the win over there. D-Rod also getting back on track. And then, I mean, it would be a shame if I didn't mention Ramazan Tamirov, who was able to get a swift victory against CJ Vergara, was able to get him out of there very quickly in the first round. And I mean, he had CJ Vergara doing a dance out there in the middle of the octagon and just trying to avoid those strikes. So big congratulations to Tamirov. Possible another flyweight that we'll see on the rise over there. And the 125 division, definitely a division that is looking to possibly see some more competition into this 2025 year. Pat Sabatini getting a win over Jonathan Pierce. That was not something I really had down in my books. I know Pat Sabatini's been doing a lot of grappling. He's been staying very active in that sense, but I mean, he proved he's on a whole different level with that win over JSP. I really think that Pat Sabatini has the potential to go on a little bit of a run, especially if he's able to keep up this streak of activity. He had a little bit of a tough outing against Diego Lopez, but I mean, what fighter has had a tough outing against Diego Lopez? I mean, let's go ahead and contact Monzoar Evolov about that question. But we go ahead and take it over a little bit more down the card. Junior Taffa getting the win over Sean Sheriff. That was not something I expected. Sean Sheriff had a little bit of a rough second round. I mean, he was dominating in that first, had Junior Taffa down, and I thought he was possibly going to be able to finish him with strikes, but that was not the case, and Junior Taffa was able to pull through with that TKO win after Sean kind of looked a little discombobulated in that second. Obviously wishing the best for Sean going forward, and hopefully look to see him back in the UFC fighting another fight, or I don't know, maybe back over that lights out in California. That's always great to see the California guys come back, but obviously always want to see them in the UFC and succeeding. Speaking about California fighters, Corey McKenna dropped her matchup in a split decision loss to Julia Pilastri. Just wasn't Corey McKenna's night that night, but I think genuinely she has a real bright future ahead of her. I mean, only 25 years old, and someone that is fighting, even though she is fighting at strawweight, fighting above her weight class, I mean, she could be someone that's fighting at that atom weight class, and I believe that she has done more than enough to prove herself on the regional scene. So I think that we'll possibly be seeing her either make a return to Cage Warriors here pretty soon, or who knows, A1 Combat. I know that there's an organization that she obviously has done commentary for alongside yours truly, but that would be pretty awesome to see her return to the cage over there at A1 in front of I know she's over there from England, but yeah, that Team Alpha Male team has really just taken her in as their own, and I think that that would be a nice homecoming for her to be able to go ahead and fight over there at A1, or maybe we, like how I said, going in Cage Warriors. I think that would be a great landscape for her to try and possibly get back into that UFC. And who knows, if they do open up an atomweight division, like I think she stated that in her most recent post. I think she said that she possibly wasn't going to be looking to be signed by the UFC after this one. So that's kind of why I was mentioning some Cage Warriors and A1 Combat and so on and so forth. So just wanted to, wish my best onto Corey moving forward. Cody Haddon made his debut in the UFC after a very, very successful win over Billy Brand over there on the Dana White Contender Series, getting the nod over Dan Argueta. I mean, I think Cody just proved he was on that level, like how he was in the Contender Series in this one. I think that just goes to show you of how good Billy Brand is as well. I mean, Billy had a very, very tough 2 rounds with him, and I think that is something that possibly matchmakers will be looking at forward. And we'll kind of rolling into our next segment here. I think possibly you could be seeing the likes of a guy like Billy Brand, or possibly another A1 Combat former contender and Ernie Juarez making that move over there to the likes of another Dana White Contender Series spot, because not only did Billy Brand have a very good showing against Haddon, but Juarez had arguably one of the better showings of the season in a losing effort to Jose Delgado. So I think that possibly we may be seeing those matchups being made in the future with either Billy Brand, Ernie Juarez making their way back to Contender Series. Jack Duffy actually had to drop out of his Contender Series matchup against Nick Piccinini for the last week of Dana White Contender Series. Sorry, a little discombobulated speech today, but it's crazy to kind of see the way that a couple of these A1 prospects are going to be going. And then it's not trying to get too sidetracked there, but just reminded me with the Cody Haddon victory and with everything going forward with Dana White Contender Series into 2025 with the season now closing. So it's very good to see Cody Haddon getting that win. Clayton Carpenter getting I think he was able to get the finish of the night performance of the night over Lucas Rocha for his submission, the rear naked choke. I'm gonna be honest, I did not see Clayton getting the win in this one. This was a very, very tough fight, but he made it look seamless. He did a very good job out there in terms of just sticking to his game plan, doing what he does best, and that elbow just really seemed to have a dramatic impact on Rocha, and just from there, it was all Carpenter, and Carpenter was able to go ahead and get that victory with the rear naked choke in the second round. Like how I said, I did not expect to see that, especially on the ground. I mean, I know Carpenter, he trains over that MMA lab, a lot of great grapplers. I mean, Benson Henderson, obviously kind of one of the main guys that's been out of there, but I don't know. I knew Lucas Rocha was a very tough matchup going into it at 17-1, Dana White Contender Series alum. So, I know Clayton Carpenter's also a Contender Series alum as well, but I know he's been a little bit less tested in his career. I mean, 17 fights. I'm always going to take the guy that has a lot of fights on his record. And I know that he maybe wasn't fighting top of the top competition, but Clayton Carpenter as well. I mean, he wasn't fighting guys that were absolute killers in anything. So I thought, if anything, that was going to be a pick'em. But Clayton Carpenter had a very, very solid performance out there. Possibly another flyweight we'll see on the rise over there. He had a couple of flyweights on this card that had some really, really solid performances along with Mr. Clayton Carpenter. You had Ramazan Tamirov, like how we were speaking about earlier, had a very, very good outing against CJ Vergara. And then, I mean, obviously we had Brandon Royval and Tatsuro Taira in that main event. Royval had a very, very... I know it's a split decision, but I just cannot see that being a split decision, man. Like, that's just so wild to me. I get on numbers or possibly on paper that looks like a split decision in terms of like the takedowns and everything, but I truly don't think that it was that big of a difference. I think that Brandon Royval really was doing the most damage on the feet, and when it was going to the grappling, there were some times where I know Taira, he's very, very good. Trust me. Like, this is not, I don't think Tatsuro just got rolled over and was a dominant, unanimous decision by Brandon Royval. I think that it was a matter of how kind of Royval was speaking of all week, just being the older competitor, being the guy that has been in the UFC longer, has fought a lot of killers. I mean, he's fought Brandon Moreno, he's fought oh my gosh, he's fought Alexandre Pantoja twice now. Like, this is a guy that, if we look at his record, I mean, he's fought kind of a killer's row over there at flyweight. Like, let's just take a look at it. I mean, you got Tatsuro Taira, Brandon Moreno, Alexandre Pantoja, Nicolau. I know he was able to get the finish in that one, but still, like, Nicolau was on a streak there for a while, and then he's fought Kai Kara France as well, getting the win over him with the second round guillotine, and that's kind of a loss that I feel a lot of people don't really put into Kai Kara France's record. I know a lot of people were looking at possibly Kai getting that title shot looking forward, but I mean, I just no. It's like how I was stating a little bit earlier. There's just so much to kind of contend in terms of the flyweight division right now, and I think that championship matchup leading into UFC 310 is definitely going to be very, very telling in terms of what the flyweight division will look like moving forward. If Spur is able to get that win, that obviously opens up a whole new row of contenders. Royval will probably be the first in line to get that shot. But if Pantoja wins, does he give the shot again to Brandon Moreno? Who, if he gets a win over Amir Albazi, does Amir Albazi get the shot? Does Royval get the shot with the win over Tatsuro Taira? There's a lot of questions to be answered at 125 for the UFC, but a big main event looming for the man Anthony Hernandez over there, and Michel Pereira possibly looking to have another big key matchup, but this time in the middleweight division, so bulking up a little bit, 60 pounds upwards. I'm taking a look at this card a little bit before we get into things here, and I mean, this is a really, really solid card as well. I mean, UFC for these last couple of fight nights have been doing a really, really good job from the top down. Like, these are really good cards, and you have Cameron Smotherman, he's coming in on a week's notice, looking to take on Jake Hadley. I think that's going to be a very fun matchup. Looking forward to that one. And then Sumadarji taking on Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson been extremely, extremely active this year, along with Rob Font taking on Kyler Phillips, Michel Pereira, Anthony Hernandez in that main event. Going to be speaking to Jim West of MMA Gold, the head coach of Anthony Hernandez, a little bit later on today. So make sure you are tuned in and keep your eyes peeled for that one, because it will be coming in just about 10 minutes here or so. Mateus Nicolau making his return to the cage as well against Asu Amalbayev, G Matsumoto, Brad Katona, Jocelyn Edwards, Tamiris Vidal taking on in the women's bantamweight division. A lot of matchups here. I like Jessica Penne and Elise Reed. Like, I forgot that Jessica Penne was in the UFC for a little bit until I seen that she was on this card. So I mean, congratulations to her on being able to get on this card. And I mean, she possibly has a matchup here against Elise Reed that I think she has the potential of swinging out. I know that she, last time out, she had that loss to Tabitha Ricci, but I truly think that she could get this one done against Elise Reed. This is not a heavily losable fight. I mean, we all know who I'm going with in the first fight of the night. I got Robelis to Spain by knockout. I mean, this matchup's kind of perfectly tailor-made for him at this point in terms of like UFC matchmaking. Austin Lane's a guy that's going to want to swing and bang when he goes out there, and then I think Robelis gets it done via first round KO if there is a call out for that one, because I think that's probably one of the locks of the night, in all honesty, is Robelis gets it done by KO. Alice Ardeline versus Melissa Martinez. I like Melissa Martinez in this matchup. I know that she's faced a little bit less competition in terms of fights, but she has looked, I mean, absolutely killer in the fights that she has had. Like, let's just go ahead and take a look at some of them here. I mean, 7-1 now in her MMA career, and all of them, I mean, most of her wins have been by finish. Kind of one of those combate global elites that look to possibly make their way into the UFC. I know there's been a couple of those names that have possibly leaked into the UFC before. Melissa Martinez looking to make her name, but I don't know. I like Melissa Martinez in this matchup. I know she had a tough time out against Elise Reed in her last one, but I truly think that she'll be able to get this one done against Alice Ardeline. Jessica Penne and Elise Reed. I know Jessica Penne is older. I know she's the underdog in this one, but I really do like her in this one. I don't know why. She's faced a lot of tough competition in terms of her last couple of fights. She's faced Tabitha Ricci, Emily Ducote, and now she's facing Elise Reed. And so I think it's a little bit in terms of competition, a bit of a step down. So I think that will do her some solids in terms of possibly getting back into the win column and maybe ending off their career here on a little bit of a win, because I know she's had those 2 losses back to back, but possibly looking to have a little bit of a bounce back against Elise Reed. I like Jessica Penne in this one. This is probably my underdog pick of the night. I don't usually go with the underdogs too much. I mean, obviously they're an underdog for a reason, quote unquote, but I like Jessica Penne in this one. She's faced a lot tougher competition. I just think that she'll be able to get it done against Elise Reed. I know Elise Reed's talented in her own right, but give me Jessica Penne on that one. Tamires Vidal versus Jocelyn Edwards. Jocelyn Edwards just did not look that good in her last fight. Didn't really see too much out of her. And then Tamires Vidal didn't really, I mean, she just hasn't done too much in the UFC to where I could really go with her as a pick here. And I mean, I don't know. This is a tough fight because like either one of these prospects I'm not super high on, but I have to go with Jocelyn Edwards, I guess, just because she's had more time in the UFC, she's had more experience. I think she'll be able to pull out a win here, and then she just has a little bit of the edge in the grappling. Tamira's a little bit more of a striker, likes to keep a little bit more feet, so we'll possibly see Jocelyn pulling out the win in that one, even though her last performance was a little shaky. So we'll see how she's able to pull it out in this one. Brad Katona versus Gene Matsumoto. I know this. He's an underdog in this one, and but I get it. I get the underdog take on this one, man. I really like Gene Matsumoto in this matchup. I mean, he's a killer. He's kind of been, being shipped up in terms of the UFC rankings, and we'll take a look at a couple of his previous fights here. I mean, he was Dana White Contender Series alum, got the submission choke against Dan Argueta last time out, and I'm not saying that I believe that Dan Argueta and Brad Katona are on the same level, because I definitely think that Brad Katona is a lot heavier in terms of a step up in competition, but I do think that Brad Katona is very one-dimensional in terms of his fighting style. I think he's going to be able to hold you against the cage, he's going to be able to neutralize kind of some of your attacks, and I really think that's kind of where it's going to get done in terms of Brad Katona's skill level. I think Gene Matsumoto is a little bit more dimensional in terms of his skills. So I'll give it to Gene in this one. I think Gene gets it done. I don't know if by finish, but I think definitely he gets a pretty solid nod in that one. Mateus Nicolau, Asu Almabayev. Nicolau's been trained over there at Team Irvine in California. He's the underdog in this one. He's taking on a killer, and Asu. I don't like this matchup for him coming back, but there is always the chance of Mateus, kind of pulling through on one. I'm going to go with Asu Almabayev here. I'm going to go with Asu Almabayev here. I know he's 30 years old. I get it. They're very close in age, but I really like Asu's finishing ability here. I think he'll be able to get the victory over Mateus Nicolau. Mateus has kind of proven that he can eat some shots before, so I think that Asu will be able to find the chin of Mateus Nicolau and possibly be able to get it done via finish. Darren Elkins, Daniel Pineda. I'm going to go with Darren Elkins just strictly because he's a California guy. He's over there at Team Alpha Male, but I know Daniel Pineda, definitely very dangerous in his own right, and I mean, I wouldn't doubt that this is a very action-packed fight, because whenever Darren Elkins goes in that cage, man, he really, I think Joe Rogan was saying at one time, he truly lets it all out in there, man. It's absolutely insane, how much he pushes himself in the cage, and just, compared to, you watch some other guys just give up on themselves, Darren Elkins is not one of those guys that's going to give up on himself, so I think that may be a little bit of what it comes down to here, maybe a little bit of the, I think Darren Elkins has a little bit more of UFC time in the cage, 18-10 in the UFC, and Daniel Pineda has not been as lucky at 5-7. So give me Darren Elkins in this one. I like Darren. Jake Hadley and Cameron Smotherman. Cameron Smotherman, man, he's been climbing up those ranks in terms of the bantamweights and just the regional scene. So it's really cool to see him get this shot. I don't like the fact that he's coming all the way from Abu Dhabi to go ahead and fight Jake Hadley on basically a week's notice. It's a very tough matchup. I I almost want to pick Cameron just because he's the underdog and because, you know, it'd be a great story for him to be able to come in on a week's notice, like how I said, coming from Abu Dhabi and then being able to get the win. But I just think it's a little bit too tall of a task, especially against a guy like Jake Hadley, who is, I mean, I know he hasn't had the most success in the UFC, but he's someone that, when coming into the UFC, was very, very dangerous. And, I mean, we've only really seen Cameron Smotherman one time, and that was in the Contender Series. And I know he's been able to get some fights in the meantime and been able to kind of get some work in and really improve on himself in that time. But and one of those wins being a big win over Mondo Gutierrez. But I don't know. I think that's a very, very tough calling for him to be able to take on Jake Hadley on a week's notice. But you never know in the game of the MMA world. So we possibly could be seeing a little bit of an upset. And I mean, what hell of a story would that be to tell if Smotherman is able to get the victory there? Charles Johnson, Sumaderji. I really like Charles Johnson in this one. I mean, this is kind of a feed me matchup over here. Sumaderji's moving down in terms of weight class. Charles Johnson's looked really, really good this past year, let alone, I mean, getting that knockout over Joshua Van. And then shout out to my guy Anik over there at Energy TV if he is watching. I got Charles Johnson in this one, man. I know he's 5-4 in the UFC, whatever, but dude, he's just found his page, man. Like, if there is, in terms of finding your pace and finding where you can attack, and Charles Johnson, I think, has truly kind of found that. I know it's, some people are saying it may be a tough weight cut, but like how Sumaderji is saying, this dude's a professional. This guy fights so many times a year. I love Charles Johnson. I got Charles Johnson in this one. Rob Font, Kyler Phillips. Rob Font just had a really rough outing in his last one. Kyler Phillips has looked untouchable damn near in the cage. I mean, he's looking like almost on a like Sean O'Malley-esque level of striking here pretty soon. I like Kyler Phillips in this one. Give me Kyler Phillips. I think he gets the unanimous decision victory in this one. I don't know if he finishes Rob Font. Rob Font is as tough as they come, but I definitely think that Kyler Phillips gets the nod over Rob Font in the co-main event on Saturday. Main event now, Michelle Pereira, Anthony Hernandez. You guys already know who I'm going with here. The Hernandez family, we got to stick together, man. Anthony Hernandez by finish in the second round. Give me that second round finish over there from Anthony Hernandez, or possibly third. I really think that these two are going to go in there, and I credit to my guy Tyler at Mom's Basement, man. Like, if you guys have not watched his breakdowns, like, if you guys truly want an in-depth breakdown of each single fight, go to that, man. That Mom's Basement MMA, they are killing it in terms of content, man. And he said it best, dude. These guys are going to go in there, and I know Anthony's record shows that, you know, he puts that pressure in grappling, but dude, I really, really think that Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is going to have a breakthrough performance in this one. UFC really does like Michelle Pereira and have been truly pushing him in that middleweight division. And I understand why. He's obviously a very, very exciting fighter in his own right, but I think Anthony Hernandez is just going to show a little bit in terms of grappling, dominance, and levels in this one. I like Anthony Hernandez by second or third round TKO if you are a betting man and want someone to bet on. And let's check out the odds in this one. Let's see if he's actually so he is the favorite in this one, actually, which is very, very surprising considering the fact that technically Michelle Pereira is the number 13 ranked and he is number 14. They're both only a spot off from each other. So I didn't think that there would be a favorite at all. I thought if anything, maybe there would be kind of a pick'em's odd, but a very, very interesting odd maker's choice in that one. We now look to take it over to my interview a little bit earlier in the week, getting to speak with Jim West over there at MMA Gold. It was a great pleasure getting to speak to him before this big main event over there on October 19th with Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. We now take it over to Jim West. Thank you. Here, MLH Media Uncensored. We are here today, episode the series now with Jim West, probably one of the most heralded MMA coaches in all of California, if not the West Coast. How you doing today, my man?
I'm good, doing good, man. I just got to the gym, just kind of hanging out before the practices start, at least the ones that I have to lead. So I'm just kind of hanging out.
Can you give fans, just because I think so many fans are so curious with how a coach's life, so I know a lot of fighters, they post a day in the life, you know, whatever, but give us the rundown of how a coach, especially for a coach like yourself, where you got guys in and out of UFC events coming week in, week out, or you may possibly have, you know, back-to-back weeks where you just have guys that are across the country or across the world, because you have guys all over. How is that to kind of deal with those responsibilities, and how is the way that Mr. Jim West manages everything that he's got going on?
I just, it's become a standard for me, right? Like, as far as how I navigate, everyone that's fighting, and how I kind of plan accordingly as far as who's up next, depending on the fight. Obviously, some fights are, have more, or I don't want to say more important, but higher level magnitude associated to them. So a lot of coordination, day in and day out, with each athlete, and the other coaches, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, we're on the right track, depending on where they're at in, the time frame of their fight, ensuring that we're peaking at the right time. I mean, it's just a fine balance between them all, and I rely on my coaches too, that to kind of communicate with me, and then the athletes themselves to make sure they're communicating. I have multiple computers at home that I have up all the time, kind of whether I'm watching tape to look for tendencies, whether I'm tracking, you know, uh, weight of certain guys and girls. I mean, so I've just been doing it for so long that I just kind of have it's kind of hard to explain exactly how I do it. Um, it's just become part of my daily routine. Um, it's like anything else. Once you kind of get in that routine of how you do stuff and create your own standards, um, and your standard operating practices, you kind of develop a rhythm.
No, and that definitely seems like you have got the rhythm down over there in the Sacramento area. Speaking about a little bit of a familiar face that you may have in that gym, Shaler Ladd was recently supposed to make his professional debut over there, LFA in Santa Cruz. Had an opponent fall out, but I know he's been someone that's been prompt. He's been at it. Obviously having a stellar amateur career. What are some updates that the fans and possibly looking around California or just in general LFA fans? I mean, 4-fight LFA deal. I know a lot of fans looking forward to him to make his debut over there. Any chance we'll get to see him before the end of 2024? I know he was one of those guys that you said's been putting in a lot of work.
Yeah, it's hard to say. So he was scheduled to be on the LFA card in Vail, Colorado at the end of this month, but opponents just couldn't come through. We're now trying for November 6th, LFA in Phoenix. So, it's hard to say. His last two opponents had fallen off, the one in Santa Cruz and then the one in Vail. So we'll see if something materializes for Phoenix here November 6th. So he kind of he keeps himself ready to go. So hopefully something pops and we'll be able to announce it. But as of now, there's no opponent, so we can't really say a date.
And it definitely, I 100% understand why a lot of people would not want you to be lining up to fight the likes of Shaler Ladd. I mean, we all know that Ladd family legacy, on top of the fact that, I mean, this guy was undefeated throughout his amateur career, not a blemish on that record. And I mean, some would argue that he had a pretty nice runs in the amateur compared to his competition. Because I mean, some of the guys he was facing off against some of the top light heavyweights in the state and still doing a killer job over there.
There's a certain standard that we try to uphold as far as, building a guy up from essentially nothing, right? We've done it over and over again, and not many gyms, I don't care where they're at across the country, can't say that, right? And so, a lot of gyms just are lucky to be in the location they're in. So fighters just end up going there, right? Because of happenstance or just, availability. But by the time they become a professional, the expectation is that they've experienced tough competition. They've experienced some ups and downs. They know how to travel. They know how to cut weight. They know how to deal with media, right? Like, they know how to do all those things. By the time they become a professional, they should be professional, right? And know how to do all of those things and navigate that stuff. So you're right. Shaler fought. I mean, he was number one in North America. So he fought, I think, 3 or 4 guys that were in the top 10 in North America and beat them. So, by the time their last, I try to gauge it off of their last amateur fight. They'll ask, well, when can I go pro? Well, if it gets close to that point, I try to go out and find them literally the toughest person on the planet in that weight class, that's still an amateur, and we go out and fight them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to win, but it's a good measuring stick on determination on whether it's time, right? And Shaler, he's checked all those boxes, even though he's still only 21 years old. He's checked all those boxes, and he's progressing fantastic, right? Like, he's ready to be a professional, and he's ready to jump on the LFA stage, right? Like, some people aren't ready to jump on that stage when they go pro. They have to do, more of your traditional regional kind of show, right? Shaler's ready to fight in the LFA. So hopefully an opponent sticks here soon, and he'll be in the cage.
Much like how that route you were stating, where you guys have built fighters up like this. I mean, let's take a look at somebody who has a main event slot coming up on Saturday. Anthony Hernandez had a very, very long amateur career and then went into the pros, had quite the amount of success, and then fought Brandon Allen over their LFA, got the title, got the Dana White Contender Series spot. It's almost like history tends to repeat itself with these LFA signings and being able to take guys over there to the UFC. What are your thoughts, though? Hernandez, Pereira, main event, October 19th. It's been a fight fans have been waiting for all the way since the Sphere. So I think a lot of fans are going to be having this one circle on the calendars.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony's always in an exciting fight, right? I mean, he's hard to prepare for because, a lot of people go, oh, well, he's going to wrestle me or he's going to do this, right? So we'll use that as an example. The challenge is when you fight someone like Anthony, kind of like we'll use Khabib as an example. They go, oh, well, I'm fighting Khabib or I'm fighting Anthony, so I better wrestle for 8 weeks. Well, the problem is oftentimes most people, that's what they do. But in reality, their body's not ready for that pace that he's going to put on you, right? Very similar to Khabib. Yeah, okay, I wrestled for 8 weeks, so I really focused on wrestling. That's really awesome because I can guarantee you he's going to drain you. You're just not prepared. Like Anthony prepares his body for that up-down game all year long, right? So he has the ability to go in there and drain you where I'm fighting Anthony Hernandez. Great, I've got to get prepared for my wrestling. Awesome, you did it for 8 weeks. Trust me, that's not going to help you. As the fight goes on and you have this guy that doesn't freaking get off of you for 25 minutes, it's just really difficult to deal with. Anthony's ability to kind of mix it up, especially in close, a lot of people have a hard time with it. I mean, Michel Pereira is great. Like all the guys that you fight when you're in the UFC are tough, right? They all have a skill set that is top level. That's why they're where they are, right? But it's just Anthony's just a very difficult person to prepare for because you always think you're in shape until you realize you're not, right? And Anthony won't stop his pressure, right? Like so. That's just a really difficult thing to deal with. And, we stick to what we do well and aren't too concerned about what you do well, right? You have some tendencies and we know about what those tendencies are and we'll exploit them. But that all means we still stick to what we want to do. We're not really too concerned what you want to do, just being aware of your tendencies and we navigate your tendencies with what we do well.
100%. And I definitely feel like watching Anthony, it's like how you said, it's like watching just the life gain sucked out of his opponent sometimes. I mean, that Edmund Shabazian fight, and then even going back to the Rodolfo Vieira fight, it just seemed like in that second round, Rodolfo just was like, I don't want to be in this anymore, which is, I have that feeling that he gives oftentimes to a lot of these guys because he just is able to drown people with this pressure. And much like himself in the striking, you got Max Griffin over there as well, taking elbows, taking every kind of limb from his opponents. He's got a fight scheduled as well in December, UFC 310, Michael Chiesa. What are your thoughts about that matchup? And I mean, another matchup for Max Griffin on a pay-per-view, man. The UFC loves him on this one.
Well, Max is exciting. I mean, if you notice any MMA gold fighter that fights, it's going to be exciting. One way or another, it's going to be exciting, and they're going to look good doing it, right? Like, so I mean, it's funny because Chiesa and him have trained, quite a bit actually. So they kind of have obviously they don't know. I mean, they don't know each other, but they, when you lock up with someone, you kind of like have that. Okay, I remember that. I remember how that went.
Familiar dancing partners in a sense, they've been around the same type of people.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, it's Chiesa presents certain, aspects, of course, just like anyone does, but his are pretty, I don't want to use the word glaring, but I can't think of a better word. They're pretty predictable. They're very predictable, but he does them very well. So again, it's kind of being in tune with his tendencies and being who we are and try to exploit his tendencies as best to our abilities. And I think we have a good plan, and we'll be ready to go December 7th.
I definitely think that card is shaping up to be. And let me hear your opinion on that card, on that whole card, on UFC 310. What were your thoughts on hearing some of the announcements made this past weekend from Dana White? I mean, got the co-main event now lined up, got the main event lined up. That's going to be one hell of a card there in December, it's looking like.
Yeah, it was that Bilal, right, in Shavkat? That's the main event, right?
Yeah, I got Bilal Shavkat and then Kyle Sakura and Alexandre Pantoja in that co-main as well.
Yeah, I mean, oh, man, it's so hard. It's hard to say, right? Like Bilal's hard to go against, right? Like he doesn't do anything flashy, he doesn't do anything great, but his basics are very good. And I always kind of profess this to our team is the person that has better basics is oftentimes going to win, right? Like those who have advanced, their basics are a little bit more advanced. I just have a tendency to go with them. And I'm not saying, and Shavkat's obviously amazing, but I could just see Bilal doing something similar to what he did to Leon Edwards. I can't. Although fans aren't going to like it, right? Because it's relatively boring, right? But I can see him doing the same darn thing.
I always compare this to a lot of fighters, like how you're saying much with the technique. It's like, you know, when you're getting locked into a cage, and I know obviously these are the professionals we're talking about, it's still, they're going to go down to what they know, you know? And oftentimes, if you know like how you're saying, the basics extremely well, someone like Bilal, who he kind of started his fighting career a little late into his life. I think he was like 24, 23 when he first started MMA. And then, so it's, you know, it definitely makes sense. But continue on what were you saying there? Sorry.
No, nothing. Yeah, it's just basics win, man. Whoever's better conditioned and their basics are better, oftentimes is going to be the ones with their hand raised. I mean, it just is what it is. Like, oftentimes you see so many of these coaches on Instagram posting their videos of a 20-punch combination. You tell me when the last time you saw someone do that in a fight. Last time I checked fighters, the guys that you're fighting are moving, and they're throwing back, and they're doing all these things. And, you know, Bilal sticks with the basics, and he sticks with who he is. It's not exciting, but it's effective.
I don't know if he strikes just like Canelo yet, but I think he's well on his way to having some great striking fundamentals as well. Speaking a little bit more about some of the UFC and just overall events that are going on, I mean, to have a couple of your fighters like this, not only Anthony, but then to have Max Griffin a pay-per-view the following month, how is that for you as a coach, that you've been there since the beginning for a lot of these guys? You've been in their corners and you've been in the regional scene through them, and I mean, you're still going to regional fights. How is it for you to be able to switch one weekend from going to a local show like an A1 Combat or just a regional show in general, and then the next week you're over at the UFC events, you're having to deal with that whole, like how you said, the media attention and all that? Is it a little bit of a switch up, or how exactly do you adjust as a coach, having to be there in the corner and really just kind of having to be a solid component for your guys as well?
I mean, I love the regional shows. It's so fun. I love seeing those guys and girls that are coming up. I mean, that's fun for me. I'm not that the big shows aren't. I mean, it's just totally different. Like you said, it's, you know, a fight week for, you know, Bellator or PFL or UFC. It's very different from your regional show, right? You're there all week. Usually, sometimes you're there longer than a week, and it's pretty structured, right? From what you're doing each day, from media to your workouts to checking weight to doing all of those things. So it's a little bit. It's just so different. You can't really compare them. And then the night of the fight on a regional scene versus the big shows, it's obviously more intense because you have to be so much more laser focused. Not because of necessarily the importance, because the magnitude is different. No one can deny that. The magnitude is different on a big show versus a smaller show, right? Because there's a lot more money involved. Like, there's just so much that goes into that. But it's so much louder. It's so much louder and so different in the context of the highest levels. If you can't really make the same mistakes that you can in the region, right? You might be able to get away with 5 or 6, 7, 8 mistakes in a fight on the region because guys just aren't as quick to pick up those things. But at the highest level, man, you as a corner have to be so on top of seeing everything and be able to relay information so fast and have them receive that information so quick because the margin of error is so much different. So it's in the fight night is where the big difference is at, because the margin of error, like I said, is just so different.
Almost minuscule at a certain point when you get to UFC. It's
Yeah, you moved a quarter of an inch the wrong way. You should have went left and you went right and you got caught. Like it's that quick. Whereas in the region, you know, these guys and girls can make so many mistakes and they can oftentimes get away with it.
No, and that's a great point that you bring up, because I feel like oftentimes too you'll hear fans be like, "Oh, well, how is this coach doing this? How is this coach doing this?" It's like, well, it's coaches need to develop in their own right, you know, and I feel like that's something that's not really discussed. But I mean, someone that's definitely developing over there as well is someone that you have a pretty well-known relationship with, Aspen Lad. I mean, able to get the win over there in Paris last time out over there for Bellator. But I know that there's been some discussions about possibly going over to PFL and entering that tournament scene. What are your kind of thoughts about everything going into it? I mean, I know she's still on contract with Bellator, I believe, but is there any chance that we'll be seeing her in the PFL anytime soon?
Well, so the PFL owns Bellator, so everything's PFL. Bellator just falls under the auspice of PFL, so it's kind of a strange thing. We'll see what happens in 2025 when they start releasing kind of everything they're going to do, because obviously when PFL bought Bellator, you know, just only a few months back, you know, obviously probably scrambling, trying to figure out what the details are going to look like and how are they going to move forward as far as that merger goes and all that stuff. So I think 2025 will be a lot more interesting and a lot more detailed when it comes to that, as far as who's going to compete in the tournament on the PFL side or who's going to compete on the Bellator side of the championship series. She likes them both. She's obviously competed in them both. I'd say she's probably one of the few fighters in the world that can say that they've competed in UFC, PFL, and Bellator, all of them, and been in the top five in all three of them, right? So
I was just about to say, I think she's probably one of the only athletes ever to even compete in PFL, Bellator, and UFC, just underneath all three of those banners. You know, that's quite impressive in its own right.
Like I said, when she was in the UFC, she was number 3. You know, now she's in the top. I think she's number 7, right, in the featherweight division. So, you know, Aspen's someone, when she made her UFC debut, one thing that people probably don't know is Aspen's the only UFC athlete for every single fight a ranked opponent. Every single one, from her debut all the way to her last fight in the UFC. Every one of them was a top 15, top 10, or top 5. Yeah, she's still only 29, right? Like, she's not even not technically in her prime, I guess, right? So yeah, we'll see. She really would love to fight on the December 31st Bellator card in Japan, but we'll see if that happens.
Is there any chance, I know obviously with the whole UFC situation, but with Kayla Harrison making the move over there recently, I mean, is there any chance if she's able to notch the belt over there that we could possibly see an Aspen Ladd, little Kayla Harrison rematch over there in the UFC? I think a lot of fans would possibly be interested in that.
Well, you know, you tell me if I'm wrong, but Kayla's absolutely obliterated pretty much 99% of everyone she's fought, right? Outside of Larissa, who beat her, and then, yeah, Ketlin last week. You know, these aren't excuses, but last time I checked, Aspen's the only person that's swept Kayla several times in a fight, took her back, you know, and that was on 2 weeks just off the couch. So you never know.
I like that answer, man. And I definitely like how you stated. I feel like a lot of people don't watch that Kayla Harrison and Aspen Ladd fight and take, like how you said. I took some notes on it. I was like, hey, Aspen's doing a lot on the ground here, and I think a lot of people, I mean, they look at the judo resume of Miss Kayla Harrison. Maybe it's the whole Ronda Rousey effect, but I feel like sometimes they just have these phenoms in the women's sport, and it's just like, hey, look at those fights where they had a little bit of trouble, because I definitely think it'd be interesting to see that play out again.
It's not an excuse. Kayla won. She won a very, you know, mundane decision, right? She didn't cause any damage. She never had Aspen in any bad spot, nothing like that. In fact, Aspen had her in the worst spot. Took her back, right?
Took her back, yeah.
So that was legitimately on 2 weeks' notice. And again, not an excuse. Kayla still won, but they're facts. It was on 2 weeks' notice. Aspen had a 102 fever that night going into the fight, was throwing up in the back. PFL, Bellator, they all knew, right? She was sick as a dog. So a lot of people don't know that. It's, again, Kayla won, no problem, props to her. But look at it. I'm just saying, look at it.
100%. I think a lot of fans, hey, if they haven't rewatched that fight, I think a couple of fans after this interview are going to be watching that one back and possibly taking some notes. But just a couple of last questions here for you, Jim. I really, truly do appreciate your time on this busy fight week for you here today. But let's go back to Anthony Hernandez, Michelle Pereira, main event over there October 19th. With a win there against Michelle, where do you feel Anthony Hernandez sits in that middleweight division right now? Because, I mean, that's probably, it used to be one of the most, like, how you were saying, mundane, kind of just, Israel Adesanya was dominating, but now it's just completely opened up with the Driscus fight. I know they were previously scheduled to fight each other once, and let me just say, I think that DDP and Anthony Hernandez matchup, fireworks for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Anthony and I have always talked, it's one step at a time. He's number 13 now. After we went on Saturday, I'm sure he'll pop in the top 10. And once you're in the top 10, you never know. I mean, it's all kind of timing, circumstances, all that kind of stuff. So Michel Pereira is in front of us right now. And, this Saturday we'll fight him, take care of business, and we'll worry about whatever's after that.
A hell of a fight possibly looking up to come here on October 19th. Max Griffin recently he was on the recipient of a 4-fight deal. How is that like to see a guy like Max, a guy that you've known, I mean, you've followed his career and you've been with him for quite some time. How is that to really just see his development, not only in the ring, but outside? I mean, he's a father now. He's truly just kind of grown right in front of you. How is your relationship with Max? And kind of just detail like that whole endeavor of going into the UFC. I mean, he's originally a Tachi Palace Fights guy, so I gotta show love to him.
Yeah, Max is he's one of those. He's very cerebral, right? He really likes to break things down in detail to the minutia of everything, and I think that's actually lent him well because that's kind of his personality, and I think it's it's brought on a lot of success because of that too. Just his attention to detail is really good. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten more mature in that and made that a very focus of each camp. And I think you've continually see progression because of some of those things, right? Like he's not learning to fight anymore. These guys aren't learning to fight at this point. They know how to fight. It's where are we focusing our time on? What details are we focusing on? And Max is very much that type of guy.
And I think that you definitely, I know you may not want to give yourself the credit, but I think you got a lot of credit to give yourself with developing that whole team over there at MMA Gold. I mean, definitely a big helping hand over there in Mr. Jim West. Anybody that you wanted to thank or anybody in particular you wanted to highlight during this segment? I know you always got a lot of guys on the come up, a lot of names that are kind of peeking in the blinds, that are possibly waiting to get to that stage. Anybody or anything in particular you wanted to bring up in this closing segment?
Well, I mean, the coaches, our wrestling coach, Justin Durham, he's been with me almost forever. Fluffy leads all of our striking stuff as it is. Dave, our manager. Some athletes to look out for, though. Obviously, Shayler Ladd, Autumn Norton, who's the CFFC champion right now. Sabrina Scunia, she's looking really good as she comes up. Ryan Fury now, like he'll have his last amateur fight on A1 coming up. Roberto Vela, Rafael Vega. I mean, I could go on and on, right? Like there's a lot of them. I'm just super proud of a lot of these guys and the progression that they're making.
Yeah, it definitely seems like Rafael Vega is probably pretty happy after that last victory over Dominic Ducharme. Very, very nice win. And then Ryan Figueroa possibly looking to add another light heavyweight title. But Autumn Norton, I've seen she recently posted a little bit of a teaser that she possibly may be getting in that CFFC cage. Is there anything that Coach West wants to let me know while we're on the call here?
The end of the year, the beginning of the year, she's coming off, where she had hurt her shoulder, so she's just now getting back to kind of full force. So you'll see her within the next couple months for sure.
Autumn Norton, of course, CFFC bantamweight champion. Make sure that you guys, like how you said, if you were not taking notes while Jim West was shooting all those names out at you, make sure you do, because I promise you're probably going to see a couple of those names on UFC Fight Pass or UFC here pretty soon. Jim West, thank you so much for your time today. An absolute pleasure to get to have you on the show and get to crack your brain a little bit and get to really get into the mind of what a UFC coach is going through on that fight week, man. So I really appreciate your time. Michael Hernandez here, MLH Media Uncensored. We're going to be signing. Sorry about that, y'all. Thank you so much to Jim West for his time on the program. StreamYard did not want to hear me start talking, I guess. So we go ahead and we now head into the middle segment of our show here today. I mean, let's just go ahead and get straight into it, man. I really think that the UFC is coming back to California, January 2025. And let me tell you guys who I think the main event is going to be. Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan main event. I think it's what's going to be done. Let's go ahead and take a look into it here, y'all. I mean, if you're looking at the suspension of when Arman Tsarukyan would be ready to go ahead and get back into the cage, it would be January 12th, 2025. I believe the UFC is possibly looking to make their pay-per-view return sometime during that date. So I think, honestly, we may be seeing that Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev rematch. And then another name that I really think the UFC will possibly try to push on that California card is Raul Rosas Jr. because he is someone that formerly from Northern California, but also on top of that, has a lot of roots over there in the state. I mean, I think that is another one of those guys that you can go ahead and throw on that card. You also have Umar Nurmagomedov, possibly can throw him in the co-main event against the likes of Merab Dvalishvili, but that is still to be seen. We obviously do not have a set in stone plan yet of when the UFC will be making their return into California, but I think that if it does happen, it will be obviously at the Anaheim Center. They just recently inked that deal with the Anaheim Center to be having the WWE events and the UFC events over there. So I think that the return will be to the Anaheim Center. I think it will be in January, and I'd probably say about mid-January, maybe the end of January, they're going to have that pay-per-view. And I think we'll be seeing the UFC return with American Kickboxing Academy's own, California's own product over there in Islam Makhachev. I know he takes off to Dagestan to go ahead and do some of his training over there, but most of his training I know does come over there in San Jose at American Kickboxing Academy. Arman Tsarukyan trains over there at KDMMA in the Los Angeles, Orange County area. So I think that's a possibility that we see that lineup and we see those guys make a return on that card. And another name that I possibly want to see on that card is Anthony Hernandez. I mean, he was able to fight over there UFC 298 earlier this year in February. Had a really strong showing in front of a home California crowd. I think you possibly bring it back over there. I mean, if you're not going to be making the trip over to Sacramento or to the Chase Center anytime soon, then I think a really interesting and intriguing kind of place that you can go, if not Anaheim Center, Sacramento, man, because they got tons of Team Alpha Male guys over there. You could build a main event off Song Yadong now. Like, that's somebody that you can make a UFC Fight Night main event. He's been a UFC Fight Night main event against Corey Sandhagen in the past. So possibility of UFC kind of making that return over there to California, but I think that it will be coming January, Anaheim. I know that's kind of been a rumored date, but I think that will be what we see coming in the future. And it's just so funny to me that Arman Tsarukyan got that suspension kind of for the whole bullying fiasco. And now, I mean, possibly it helped him lead into a kind of home turf championship matchup because he's going to be over there, I like how I stated, from the LA OC kind of area where he does get some training in. I know he's kind of another one of those guys, like how I said, along with the likes of Islam Makhachev, that is very much where they travel a lot to go train. You know, I know that actually Arman went to Dagestan as well. So it'd be very interesting to see that matchup play out. And I think Arman gave Islam the most trouble in terms of the matchups he had coming up into the championship stage. I know we've seen Dustin Poirier have a really strong performance against Islam, but I think that Arman, Islam, 2 main events, January 2025, UFC 311, I believe that would be. It's going to go ahead and be in Anaheim there, folks. I have a strong feeling about that. It's just my feeling, man. I really do think that the UFC will be making that return come January. We now look to take it into the Dana White Contender Series because let me just say there were some stars on that show, and I truly think that this upcoming season, or this past season, season 8, really did produce some fiery talent. I mean, you already have Loner Kavanaugh over there going and making his UFC debut in Macau, China, I believe a little bit later this year. And then you had Cody Haddon, who recently made his UFC debut against Dan Argueta. I mean, there was just some absolute killers in this year's season. Like, let's just go ahead and take a look at week one. Week one definitely had some killers on it as well. And I think that's oftentimes one of the kind of weeks that gets forgotten about the most, is because they're right in the beginning of the season. But, I mean, Loner Kavanaugh facing off against Antoine Ho. Antoine Ho, though, someone I want to see back on Dana White Contender Series. He had a very, very tough matchup in Loner Kavanaugh. And I think that possibly could be one of those guys that you see make that return, especially in a division like flyweight, where there is not really too much of a talent pool in terms of guys that are right about ready to get to the UFC. I think Antoine Ho, he gets a couple more fights in on the regional scene, gets to that Dana White Contender Series stage, and I think we may possibly be seeing him get a UFC contract come 2025. Jose Delgado, like I stated, got that win earlier in the broadcast against Ernie Juarez. Ernie Juarez, another one of those names that I think possibly could make that return onto Dana White Contender Series. Dana White really, really liked his performance on that show, so I think that's possibly another name that we'll be looking to see next year. We now look to take it into another one of the weeks that I really like, Cavalcanti and Co. Seiyun Ko had a very, very solid performance against Eagle. I think a lot of people counted him out in this one, and like Dana White had said it a little bit earlier in the broadcast for the press conference for the Dana White Contender Series Week 10. He said, hey man, like a lot of these odds are absolutely insane, you know, and I truly agree with them, because sometimes he's got some of these contenders at like plus 150, plus 200 odds, and just you never know with the caliber of talent that is coming into this show who's going to be able to pull out the win. And I think that is no better stated than Eunice Dubin's win earlier this year over Shannon Clark. Shannon Clark was a super high up Canadian prospect. A lot of people had her on the list to kind of be a shoe-in to the UFC, and I believe the odds were super against Eunice Dubin in this fight. I think this was one of the most, like, yeah, she was a plus 450 underdog against Shannon Clark, and she was able to get that knockout in the first round over her. And then Austin Bashi, another one of those performers in week 4 that had a great fight. I think that's another name that you'll possibly be seeing, and he kind of reminds me a little bit. I know he's gotten the Sean O'Malley comparison a lot, but I don't know. He just got that energy that I really truly think he's got a good potential in the UFC, and I think that we'll possibly be seeing him have a very, very successful 2025, especially if he's able to get a matchup here pretty soon. And I mean, Loner Kavanaugh's already getting matchups, so I wouldn't doubt that we see Austin Bashi here pretty soon getting a call. We now look to take it into a couple of weeks later. I always like to kind of go by the weeks here and just really check out the talent that we have on the show. And week 5, I mean, week 5 was a little bit lackluster in terms of, you know, the amount of fights. I feel like it was a little bit of a weaker week, but I really liked Josias Musasa in this one. He did very, very well. I know that it was a split decision, but still looked very, very solid, along with Nicole Kalari getting that armbar submission victory. Just, you know, it's sometimes with these Contender Series fights, I truly do want to see them once they hit that next level. Like, I really want to see how they're going to look on a UFC stage against UFC caliber talent. And that's one of the names that that's why I was going into this next one, Taliesin Teixeira. I am super excited to see what he does at heavyweight, because there's not really a ton of heavyweight prospects right now in terms of Dana White Contender Series guys, or just in general guys that are on the uprise. So Taliesin Teixeira had a very, very strong performance. Really excited to see what he does. I mean, Elijah Smith and Aaron Tao, that was a banger of a matchup. I think Aaron Tao is another one of those guys you may see kind of on that Dana White Contender Series short list to be able to get a call back, possibly, because let me tell you, he had a very, very strong showing against Elijah Smith. I know he wasn't able to earn the win, but that first round looked very, very dangerous, and then Elijah was just able to kind of just go ahead and fundamental, you know, he just had really strong fundamentals in this one, was able to go ahead and get the win. I was really disappointed in this Benjamin Bennett and Joey Hart fight. I feel like, you know, Joey Hart, even though he suffered the loss, I think that's another name that we possibly could be seeing back on Dana White Contender Series, especially with his finishing ability. I think that the UFC really does really love those guys that are able to get those finishes and get guys out of there quick, and Joey Hart is the definition of that, and I think that's a big reason why Benjamin Bennett obviously was not signed on. But I mean, Ahmad Hazanzada, another big win over there in Dana White Contender Series, got the win over Dylan Montello. That was another guy that I really, really was like, we'll see how he does in this one. I know Dylan's a solid competitor as well, and it was a very near even fight. They were going at it in this one. I mean, Mantello almost had him. I thought that we were very, very close to seeing Mantello get the finish, but Ahmad was able to go ahead and pull out the win, was able to earn that UFC contract, and now we'll possibly look to see him in 2025. But very, very excited to see Loner Kavanaugh take on the likes of Jose Ochoa over there at Macau, China. That's kind of one of the, I mean, we had Cody Haddon recently, but one of the first guys that we're really truly getting to see make that contender series jump into the UFC. So very, very excited to get to see his matchup coming forward. And we now look to take it into our next interview for today, talking to a guy that has seen the Dana White Contender Series floor many, many a times, either in the corner or watching a couple of his buddies get their opportunities, and the likes of Hyder and Mill and Raul Rosas Jr. We now look to speak to Carlos Figueroa over there out of Northern Alliance Fight Academy over there in the Northern California area. And we now look to take it into that interview here. Thank you so much for watching so far, and we will see you on the other side. Hernandez here for MLH Media Uncensored. We are here today with Mr. Carlos Figueroa. Man, the other man behind Chiwiwiss over there in Northern California. You just helped your teammate make weight right now. You've been doing a whole lot of things. What's going on, my man? How's the day going? How's your Friday?
It's going good. I got up early, got some miles in for my cardio for my upcoming fight, and then after that I put my focus on helping my buddy make weight for his first amateur MMA fight. So that's good, and he's on weight, so he's gonna freshen up, feel a little better, and then he's probably gonna head over to the weigh-ins. Weigh-ins are like at 5, so yeah, he's on weight like a pro, so that's good.
And you guys are going to be having that event for David Terrell over there, Rumble in the Valley, his second event. How is that to kind of, I mean, you were in the corner for his last event for a couple of guys, and then I believe you also helped corner another one of your teammates over there as well. How is that to be in the corner and helping out with a couple of your teammates and helping them get ready for your fights? When you've been in this game as well, and you've definitely had your own share of getting ready for fights, much like how you're getting ready for November 15th.
Yeah, it just feels good, bro. It feels good to be able to give back to my team, or like just the experience. I've learned a lot, like from making mistakes to doing it right to doing it wrong. So I'm just like from the nutrition to how to cut the weight the right way, So I just whatever knowledge I got from people, like at one point I was working with Eric, who's Jake Paul's nutritionist and Conor McGregor's nutritionist. He used to train with Dave a long time ago, so Dave linked me up with him a few years ago, and so I got a lot of knowledge just from working with that guy, on how to make weight, how to eat, how to water load the proper way, and shit like that. So I took advantage of that, wrote shit down, or saw what worked best for me, and then I just kind of passed it on to my team. And it seemed to work out right now again, so that's a good thing. And then after not only that, but just being around Raul and other people like my buddy Joe Soto, other guys that fought on the big show and stuff. I've been like with Joe for weight cuts, for fights, fight week. I've been with Raul for multiple fight weeks, weight cuts, and it's all the same process in a way, So
yeah.
It feels good to give back.
No, and that must be pretty interesting too, because you like how we were stating a little bit before on the call, you've really been kind of part of some rather crazy journeys if you really think about it. I mean, think about Joe Soto, somebody that took that championship match on what was it, a day's notice, saved the UFC event. And then you had Raul Rosas, the youngest UFC fighter in the whole entire history of the company. I know the company's only been around for 30 years, but you've been around for, not only to see Raul's career flourish, and you've really seen him grow up, but like how you said, you were around it when Joe Soto was over there at NCFA. Can you kind of just give that overall, environment of how it is to train over there? Because I believe that's one of the most slept on gyms in kind of Northern California's NorCal Fighting Alliance. David Terrell, he's got a lot of killers going in and out of there. And then, of course, all the Scrap Pack guys come and visit. Nate Diaz, Gilbert Melendez, bring their guys over there as well. So you're just having a flourishment of knowledge. How is it to kind of be over there and be one of the pillars as well?
It's good, like at first, sometimes, that's where I actually started training and stuff. And then I remember training with these guys and shit, and getting smashed on consistently, getting smashed on, bro. To almost where like it fucked through my head. Like I'm like, fuck, maybe I'm not good enough and shit like that. Then I go to other gyms and I'm rolling with black belts, or I'm training with other guys and I'm fucking tapping them out. And I'm like, wait, fuck, like how come this feels so much easier, you know? So it's definitely like different, like especially when it comes to the grappling and the jiu-jitsu, I can't really describe, like there's been a couple of guys that I can't even describe like how easy they made it seem and flawlessly, and then just smash you. And then you go to another gym and you're rolling with a black belt and you're thinking like, oh fuck, this dude's good, and then you realize that he's not that good actually, you know, or it's not the same, you know what I'm saying? At least when it comes, especially when it comes to the grappling, like for sure. So then you start building that confidence. You're like, oh fuck, man, like why am I selling myself short? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you realize that you're actually training with some savages.
No, and I think you definitely have a very much an expertise of knowledge in that. And just someone that's like looking through your record at A1 Combat, you're 2-0 for the promotion with 2 finishes on your record, both of those being some first round finishes. What do you think about going back to this promotion? I know you've had a little bit of a break from being over there at A1, but now coming back, and it kind of feels like almost like a homecoming. It's in Northern California. You're going to have a lot of people over there for this fight, more than likely. How is it to kind of really just have this date align? It almost feels like it's like destiny aligning in a sense, because, I mean, your company's been killing it. Chiwiwiss has been doing great. Everything's been kind of aligning for Mr. Carlos Figueroa now. Can you kind of explain the process before going into November 15th and how this all came together?
Yeah, to be honest, at one point I was gonna just stop fighting, you know, because I got other things going on, like other business going on other than the Chiwiwiss, to where I'm like, I don't gotta fight, you know. I set myself up, and then I saw Raul fucking go out there and get signed, and I'm like, man, what am I doing? I got it kind of inspired me to get back in there, to be honest, bro. And then I go out there, I finish these 2 guys, and it kind of lit a fire back under me. And then I take 2 losses after that. Like I try to rush the process, bro. You know, I try to take fights right away, and I should have like slowed down, you know. And then but I'm excited to get back in there. I'm happy I'm going back to A1. Like if you really look at it, I feel like I fought for LFA and I fought for A1, and I kind of feel like those are like the biggest promotions I fought for, you know. And I'm undefeated with those 3 fights at least, you know. Like I got 3 finishes, one in LFA and then 2 in A1. I'm excited about this matchup. I feel like I'm not discrediting my opponent or thinking that I'm just gonna run through him, but I am training hard so I can run through him, you know. Like, and but I'm taking him completely serious. But the goal is to, like, I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. He's gonna try to run through me and shit like that, you know. And but that's the goal for every fight. It's like to go in there and try to get these guys out of there. Like, and I just feel like I'm taking more of a different mental approach towards the game. Like, to where like I feel like that's been my downfall in my career. Is like sometimes me doubting myself. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like as long I feel that my cardio is gonna be on point, and my mental is gonna be on point, and then I don't. It doesn't even matter if he pulls out and they bring me another guy. You know, like I feel like I'm gonna go in there and smash whoever they put in front of me and get my hand raised, because I'm doing all the work to get the cardio on point, so I know I can go 3 hard rounds with anybody. I know I'm high level. You know, my record might not show I'm high level, bro, but I'm high level. I know I'm high level, bro. I've been around a lot of guys.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. It's like, I mean, a lot of people may look at your record and may think a certain way, but I mean, watching your fights, anybody can tell you that record is very, very deceiving, and anybody signing the dotted line is in for a hell of a night. And I think even when you fought Brian Dow, I mean, in that last one, that was an absolute scrap for the ages. Both you guys going at it. Can you kind of go into that one and what your mindset was for that one? Because I know, like how you said, you're going into these matchups back to back. You know, it's a different type of mindset to go into these fights, especially like how you're saying back to back to back and just constantly putting your body through camps. You know.
To be honest, with the Brandon Dow fight, I kind of fought more with like ego than a strategy. You know what I'm saying? Because I I should have took him down. I should have figured out how to win the fight instead of trying to sit there and bang it out with him, because that's his strength, obviously, you know, is on the feet. And I would have too much pride trying to get that knockout. But like if I would have been shooting or something, you know, maybe the outcome would have been different and stuff. But I was excited. I was excited to fight somebody like that. This guy was knocking guys out, you know. And I gotta give it to him. That dude has balls. He's a real fighter, you know. There's not a lot of guys that out there like that. A lot of guys are trying to cherry pick their fights and shit like that, you know. And I remember punching this fucker, and I see him get rocked, and he'll look at me and he'll be like, "Come on, like let's go." And then I knew I couldn't just rush in, you know what I'm saying? Because you rush in, then you get fucking finished and shit. But I feel like I had a little bit too much ego in that fight, and I should have gone to the game plan. Like Raul told me to take him down in the second round. He told me that, don't forget, bro, if you take him down, more than likely you can finish him, you know, or take him down and hold him down. You're gonna win the fight. And I just completely disregarded what he told me, and I went out there and I fucking kept trying to swing, and then at the end we ended up fucking banging it out for the last little bit of the round. But I mentally, I gotta be ready to stick to the game plan and follow the game plan, or change the game plan if I have to get the win. You know, like I don't want to go out there and fight with ego.
Definitely always the biggest challenge for a lot of fighters when you go in there is to try and stick to that game plan, because I mean it's such a rush when you get in there. You only got 5 minutes within a round, you got 3 rounds, and you're just trying to go ahead and get that finish and get that glory. But it definitely was a hell of an experience to watch. Let me tell you, for all the fans that are watching at home, I think they're definitely thanking Carlos Figueroa and Brian Dow for that experience in the cage. But coming up, man, I mean, just to speak up more a little bit about that relationship with Raul and the relationship you have overall with that whole family, can you kind of go into how it's been to not only be around for Raul's career, but his brothers as well, because their careers have also had some time over at A1 Combat, and I mean, they're stars in their own right. They're possibly on the doors to the UFC. What are your thoughts about that whole Rosas family and their MMA impact, and overall just getting to work alongside them?
You know, like I love them like my brothers, or I love them like that. Like their parents treat me like the same. So it's like their family to me. Like we spent multiple Christmases together. Like I can't say enough. You know, I don't got a dad or anything like that, so I feel like his dad's almost been like a dad for me as well and stuff. So or even my mom, you know. So I'm just kind of like alone, and I got a couple siblings and shit like that. But that's kind of like almost like they call me their adopted son, you know. So I'm just thankful, and I know that Jesse's like a fight or two from getting signed to the UFC or going to the Contender, you know. And then I think Kevin's gonna make a lot of noise because he likes knockouts, and you could tell in his last fight how he fucking killed that guy. And his grappling's also on that level, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody's grappling's on that level, but then, you know, Kevin likes to knock people out, so I feel like he's gonna bring a different like style, and I feel like that's, people like to see people get knocked the fuck out, you know, let's be honest. So
that's what sells.
So I feel like he's gonna be in the UFC within the next year, you know. I feel like sometime next year he'll get the call, you know. Like he was supposed to fight like a week ago. Dude pulled out, and then they're having like the same trouble that I had like in the beginning. I couldn't get no fights, bro. So that's why I would just take whatever I would get. And then now that I'm at the time, I was just like, I've always kind of had this mentality like I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. I don't give a fuck. But in reality, if you think about it, this business. And you gotta be smart. You gotta pick your fights. You know, if you're gonna fight for fucking $1,000, $500, whatever it is in the beginning of your career, you know, like why do you want to fight a fucking killer for? You know what I'm saying? You're not getting paid the big money. You know what I'm saying? Like it's better just build your record and not take these crazy fights and wait till you have to fight these crazy guys, but actually get a bag for it. You know, and I feel like that's the way the game is. But then I also feel like the game's full of a bunch of pussies and shit like that. But
it's the hardest balance. Because I definitely feel you. It's like in order to get to that UFC level, you need to fight. You need to get this certain record, you know. But then at the same time, if you lose to too many guys, it's like, oh well, you know, you've lost so many times. But it's like, how is that a knock against you if you're losing to guys that are actually going and doing the thing, you know, that are actually going and winning fights as well? So, because you'll see guys on the regional record where you look at their losses and you're like, a lot of these guys are either in the UFC or former UFC guys. How is this guy not in the UFC? You know, so it's crazy to me. So it's good to see another fighter having that thought as well.
Yeah, yeah, and then like for me, it's hard for me to get fights, bro. I've been trying to get on A1 since the last time, and nobody wanted to fight me, according to them at least. You know, like I don't know, but like they were trying to get me on there, and it was like at one point I was just like, just tell me who and give me the 8 weeks, you know, or 6 weeks at least to get ready, and I'll fight. But they'll be like, oh, these guys don't want to fight this guy. I'm not gonna start naming names and shit like that, but they're just like, these guys don't want to fight, this guys don't want to fight. And then some of these guys I've actually trained with, so I could see why they wouldn't want to fight, you know, like because I mean, especially now that I know what I gotta do to kind of win the fight if I were to fight some of these guys. But training's always different than fighting, you know, so I don't really hold on to that too much. But like I've said, I've trained with a lot of guys that have fought in the UFC, that have been champions or fought for titles, and even like my boy is killing it right now. His brothers are killing it, and I know that I'm of that level, bro. I just made a lot of mistakes early in my career that kind of makes it look like I'm not that level, but I definitely know I'm that level for sure.
And well, it must be a hell of a hard assignment to go ahead for Tom Anderson to say, hey, I got this half Mexican, half Guatemalan guy that wants to go ahead and swing and bang and go ahead in that cage and go at you with all he's got. I mean, it's a pretty hard sell, so I can't blame a lot of these promoters for having trouble finding you a matchup over there, Carlos. But speaking a little bit more about your overall relationship with Raul and how, I mean, let's just go back to Louisville, the Yum Center. The night that Chiwiwiss was created and just broadcast into the world, that was the saying that you and Raul kind of had for a while. You know, you and your buddies kind of just shooting the shit, and now it's worldwide. You got people, you got cops pulling you over. Like, just go into this, man.
Bro, like I came from like a really rough background and shit like that, and I remember I started saying that shit in juvenile hall. So this shit goes back like 15 years or something, you know. I was saying that shit in juvenile hall, and then when me and Raul would train, you know, like because they were little, I've known these guys since they were little kids, bro, you know. So at one point I'd always be the guy that got to the top of the mountain first and shit like that, and I'd be like, oh, if you guys don't fucking make it, like you ain't getting a ride back down, you know, because the car was up there, and so we had to run up to the car again, and then we'd get to drive back down from the mountain and stuff like that. And I'd always like just kind of say like, be like, oh, Chiwiwiss, when I try to make fun of them, or I'll kind of burn them or clown them on something. I'll be like Chiwiwiss, and then it was like it was just funny, you know. But then they started saying it here and there to me, you know. But then when we spent like that time in Mexico, we'd be playing ping pong and shit like that, and then every time I was losing at first, and I started smoking everybody, and every time I'd win and if somebody was next, I'd be like Chiwiwiss, or I scored a point, and then fucking next you know, like these fuckers are calling me and just to say Chiwiwiss and shit like that. And there's a time where Raul was like I don't know, he was like 12 14 years old, you know, and he's always been like kind of like a little, like he's always felt himself, you know. And he was dancing and trying to clown me as a rolling, and he was already tough at that age. He was already tough and giving me some work. And I remember he kind of like he was trying to clown me, and then I grabbed him and I submitted him, right. And after I submitted him, I got up and I was like Chiwiwiss, you know. And then fucking it kind of just went from there, bro. So I feel like when Torsios came out and like flipped him off and like disrespected him, like he didn't, like we never planned on saying that shit or anything like that. So I feel like that night, Torsios was like, fuck you, try to kick him, and then he choked him out. So then Raul was like, hey, I got you, motherfucker. Like, Chiwiwiss, you know?
Reach back into the back pocket of you beating him back in the day.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. And then after that, it kind of blew up. And then I kind of didn't even, I was actually cornering another friend of mine that's like a brother to us too. And it turned out that his fight ended up falling through the day of the fight. His opponent didn't even show up to the venue after all. So it was like whack. And And then I got people sending me messages like, "Hey, bro, fucking that fool's fucking just said that, this and that." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck, bro, I'm embarrassed." I'm like, "Hell no." I'm like, "Fuck, that shit's embarrassing." I didn't want like any, like, that's our thing, you know what I'm saying? Like the boys
Yeah.
being silly and shit like that. Now the fucking whole world knows it. And I'm like, "Fuck, dude, I'm embarrassed." And then he called me and he's like, "Let's turn it into a brand. Let's become business partners." You know, he's like, "I always wanted to like." He always wanted to. We always talked about one day doing something together, like investing some of our money and starting a business together. We didn't know what it was. We're talking about like getting apartments. We're talking about just investing money. So then one day, fucking, you know, fighting's not forever and all that shit's not forever. So we figured we got to figure out how we're gonna invest the money, and which we still got plans on doing other things like that. But then he hit me up. He's like, let's be partners. Let's push this as a brand. And I was like, nah, bro. Like, if anything, just do it yourself. You know, like, I don't need to be part of it. Like, you're the one that made it blow up. And he was like, bro, like, I'm gonna need a business partner, somebody to help me regardless. So he's like, I'd rather you be one of the guys that gets a cut than all these other fucking guys that don't even know me or haven't grind with me, you know? So then I still kind of didn't want to do it. And then Pops calls, you know, his dad. And he's like, "Hey, bro, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, like, like he's like, you gotta jump on it, you know, because somebody else is gonna jump on it and they're gonna get money. So why not be you, you know?" And then after that, I was like, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'd rather just keep our relationship the way it is. And his dad's like, "Well, if you're not gonna do it for yourself, then do it for your daughter, you know? Like, it's something like you could leave for her or something like." And so I was like, "All right, fuck it." So we did it, and then it actually just started going crazy, bro. It started going crazy, and we went like on a little tour and stuff, and we went, and as we're sleeping, I wake up and I look at my phone and I looked at the numbers it was doing, and I was like, "What the fuck," you know? And I wake Raul up, and I'm like, "Bro, look at what we did overnight," and he looks at it. And he's like, "Oh fuck, bro, let's go back to sleep then." You know, like, let's keep making money in our sleep. But yeah, I'm grateful, bro. I'm grateful to have those people in my life. You know, like, I just got back from Vegas. I was out there for 2 weeks doing camp. I'm gonna be out here for my buddy's fight in a week, and then I'm gonna head back over there and try to finish my camp over there, bro. They've helped me out a lot, and in a lot of ways, you know, and mostly I feel like the biggest thing that's been missing has just been like my mental, you know, like me believing in myself, me loving myself, and shit, you know, because it takes a lot, bro, to get in there and do what we do, you know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, I've had like I've carried a lot of shit around on my shoulders for a long time, bro, and it's like I feel like at points I felt like I went in there with my mind thinking like, "Oh, I wish I get my ass whooped, like, because I deserve to get my ass kicked and shit like that," you know. And I never actually really got my ass fucking whooped, bro. Like, I haven't even seen, like, I've had 20 fights, like, amateur and pro, and I've never even seen my own blood yet. And there's been times where I actually wanted to get my ass fucking smashed on, and it just kind of didn't happen, you know, or I'd be holding back and stuff. And it's like, I can't be having that mentality, bro. You know, I can't fucking be thinking like that, you know, like, I deserve to win. So, like, especially if I'm putting in the work and I'm busting my ass, you know, and shit. So it's been a lot of the mental thing for me, to be honest.
No, and I feel like you're someone that's definitely growing every single time that you not only grow in that cage, but also going in that gym. You know, they have the classic saying of getting better 1% every day, and I think you have truly been a testament to that, my man. So I just want to go ahead and give you your flowers here for that. But I also wanted to ask you a little bit. I seen you recently got baptized as well. I know that was a big moment. That was something that was very emotional for you as well. Can you kind of go into that a little bit? Go into the reasoning and just overall of how much of that meant for you, because like how you said, you're really trying to better yourself in every asset, and I think a lot of people are truly seeing that.
Yeah, to be honest, it was because like I said, I wasn't loving myself, bro. You know, there was like in one of my post-con fights, I when I knocked that guy out with the elbow, it was, I think, Morgan. I kind of said that I wanted to lose my life at one point. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's what I'm talking about, like the mental shit. You know, like I just carried a lot of shit from when I grew up and stuff like that. And like I said, I was going there thinking I wanted to get my ass kicked instead of thinking like I'm trying to kick this guy's ass. I was hoping that I was gonna get fucked up and shit like that. And it's like, who the fuck thinks like that, you know? And it was kind of like a lot of things happened in my life. I went through a very dark time like around COVID, a lot of things started falling through in my life, like really bad, bro. Like things got bad. Like I I don't really talk about this, and I don't really want to get into it too much. But like at one point, like my stepdad was like kidnapped in Guatemala. They're sending us videos of him being tortured and asking for money. And I was in a like toxic relationship. I had some problems at the time. I ended up training at Team Alpha Male for a little while, you know. So there was a lot of bad things going on in my life, bro. I was trying to get my contractor's license, bro, and like I couldn't fucking pass my test, you know. And eventually, we got through it, you know. But it was just like a dark time in my life, and I stopped believing in God, bro. You know, like I stopped believing in God like a while ago, like I saw my mom a long time ago, like we're broke as fuck, and she had like a shopping cart with all our shit in there in a bus stop, and we had nowhere to go, bro. And I carry that shit around for a long, long time, you know. And like I was only 13 years old, you know, and I was a troublemaker and getting in trouble. It got to the point where I was just going through all that dark shit and stuff, and then I kind of stopped believing, and I kind of almost gave up, you know, like and then I wrote down some shit, bro. Like I wrote down some fucking goals and stuff like that. Like I had a conversation with a guy that used to watch me when I was in jail, that I kept in contact. Like he was a correction officer, and I kept in contact with that dude for like the longest. He's actually the one that kind of, I always wanted to be a fighter and shit like that. And he was like the one that told me like kind of like to pursue it. And after that, like I decided like that I after all that shit, you know, I kind of didn't really believe, you know, and then some time went by from me feeling like the way I felt, like in my head and shit, and I had wrote down some goals, bro, and before you knew it, fucking I had accomplished all the shit that I wrote down, and like I was talking about how I wanted to fucking pass that test, you know, how I wanted to have a business, and I never really had shit growing up, bro. So I'd always look at like a truck and be like, damn, that shit's sick. I hope one day I have that shit, or I wanted a car and stuff like that, like a nice car I have. And then I one day it happened, I had wrote down that shit, like these goals, you know. I wrote down that day that I felt like shit, that I didn't feel like I wanted to be around. I wrote all that shit down on a paper. I put that paper away. I totally forgot about it, you know. And then 2 years later to the date, I'm fucking sitting on lunch. I'm going through my lunch bag to write down a customer's number. And it's that fucking paper where I wrote down these goals. And I remember on the goals, I wrote down that I either wanted to get like a Dodge Ram or like a Lexus. And that I wanted to get like a start the business. I wrote down that I wanted to win a fight, you know, like in spectacular fashion, you know, like by knockout or some shit. And it kind of hit me at that moment, bro, because I pulled out the paper to write down the number, and I was like, hey, I gotta let you go, bro. Like I'll call you back. And I hung up. And I just looked at the paper and I started crying, and I was like, holy fuck, bro. Like it was 2 years on the date. It was, so at that moment I felt like it was God talking to me, bro. Like I had the truck, I had the car, bro. I had some money, I had everything that I wrote down on there, and it tripped me out because I just wrote one or the other, you know, like either I want this truck or this car, or I want the business, or I want to win a fight. And I had just knocked out 2 dudes in like less than a minute, you know, like combined that they won. So it was like it kind of like I was like, holy fuck. And that day when I was feeling like all fucked up like that, and I wrote that shit down, bro, I had $100 bill, and I went to the store and I paid with that $100 bill, and my change was a $10 bill, bro. That I don't think I'm ever gonna spend in my life, you know, like not even if I was broke. But that $10 bill right here, bro, like if you see what it says
love yourself.
Yeah. And to me, like, who the hell else? Who was that, bro? That was God talking to me, bro. Like,
That's
I know I'm not trying to
wild.
be weird or religious like that, but that's the
No,
reason I
that's
got
crazy.
baptized. That's the reason I got
That's
baptized. And because I have a daughter, and I just want to be like a better man, a better example. Like a lot of people look up to me, bro. Like a lot of people look up to me. Like a lot of people, like from where I grew up at, a lot of people look up to me. I've had people get out of prison that hit me up like, "Hey, bro, like, give me," like, I didn't even know who the fuck they were, but I was homeboys with some of their homeboys, and they know, and they're like, "Call this guy. This guy changed his life. This guy's like doing the right thing," and like, so like I hope I connected them with people down in SoCal, like, like, and it's crazy because now those guys are changing their life, like they're off probation, they're off parole, or like just kids around here looking up to me and shit like that. Like, I don't want to be a bad example. And then, I just wanted to accept myself, love myself, and I just felt like it was God talking to me, bro. Like it's crazy what I did in those like 2 years, like I'm still like, it's crazy to me. It's fucking crazy.
That is
So I was
definitely
at that moment, I was like, I promised God, like I was like, hey man, like I remember promising him at the time, like if you help me with this, like I'm gonna get baptized and I'm gonna accept you in my life and everything. And I forgot about it, bro. Then 2 years just passed by, and then like after that, when I saw that, I was like, damn, I actually gotta get baptized. I gotta keep my promise, and cause like it fucking happened, bro. It's crazy, and like I don't have to
yeah.
fight on the 15th, for no financial reasons or anything like that. I'm only gonna fight because I want to fight, because I love this shit. Like, like I'm not doing it because I want some fucking clout, like a lot of these clowns, that want to be seen or want to act like they're fighters, but they fucking fight once every 2 years, or they only take the fight if it's the right guy. Like, I'm doing this shit because I love it and because I enjoy it. And in that bow fight, it was like the first time where I actually had fucking fun, bro. Even though things didn't go my way and it was a war, I never felt so comfortable, and I actually enjoyed it, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, I can't explain it to you, but like I remember, like when I got out of the cage, like fucking Raul was like, "You had fun, huh, bro?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, I know, I could tell." And then his dad's like, "Bro, you had fun. Like this is what you were born to do. Like it was fun." And then little by little, I was like, "All right, like I'm gonna get baptized." And finally, I pulled the trigger. Like I was talking about it for like almost about a year, 9 months, and then finally, like I went to dinner. And I was telling like this guy I wanted to get baptized. He's like, "Well, I'm the pastor. I could baptize you if you want." And I was like, "Well, fuck, let's do it." And then I just went and I did it. And I'm just trying to be like more conscious of the way I am, like try to be nicer to people, try not to do the bad things, Like I'm not perfect, and I know I'm gonna fuck up a bunch more, but you get what I'm saying.
100% no, and I think a lot of people will be very inspired by that message, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are probably wondering where their purpose may be in life and where exactly they're lining up on the whole grand scheme that we call this
That's my
wonderful
boy.
life.
I just made weight. He's gonna go weigh in, bro. So I'm just saying bye to him.
Hey, my man. Hey, best of luck to you, brother.
Love you, bro. Bye.
Carlos, an absolutely inspirational story, man. I mean, I think not even storybooks in Hollywood could go ahead and write something like that. Originally from the streets over there in Santa Ana, correct?
Anaheim, Orange County, yeah, but yeah.
And then now over in Santa Rosa, it's been a journey.
Yeah, and it was kind of crazy too because me and Raul recently we went to somebody's court hearing, like just some guy like that, and there's like a doctor, bro, like pretty much like asking to like the court to give this kid another chance, and like everything like they talked about, bro, they pretty much described my life. You know what I'm saying? Like everything that the doctor was saying was kind of saying like how this guy just needed another shot at life, rehab, but like not rehab for drugs, but like rehab to rehab his head, rehab his way of thinking. And like and she was talking about how only like 2 to 3% of people like get out of that situation. And then it kind of almost made me believe that like that I'm different, bro. Like I shouldn't be here, and like to be where I'm at, to have the things that I know materialistic things ain't shit, bro, but I could have never imagined myself driving a fucking $60,000 car, or a fucking $80,000 truck, or anything like that. But I can't even know what that type of money was, And for me to be here and be doing my thing and be doing this just because I love it, it's like I consider myself special, bro. I consider like God's had me, I feel like I'm favored by him, and that's really why I'm trying to give my life to him.
Definitely think that a little bit of God's magic has came into play with Carlos Figueroa's career. I know you stated that you have that contracting business as well. Do you want to give a little plug in for that, a little shout out for anybody in the NorCal area that's possibly looking for your work?
Yeah, we do a fire protection and stuff. So most of our work actually like comes from like the fire department and
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
So like new construction homes and stuff like that, we do like fire protection and stuff like that. So you could pretty much like if you need any of that, you could hit me up at 707-888-5251. And it's called Cali Fire Protection. And yeah, and if you need some merch, you go on the Chiwiwiss and get some merch, you know.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I do. I started doing that when I first got here. I moved up here and I needed a job. I had no idea what I was applying for, bro. I had no idea what I was applying for. All I knew was that I wanted to be in my kid's life when I moved up here because I have a daughter. And when I moved up here, I was broke as fuck, no money, and I got that as a job. And I remember like within the first week of working, like I saw like the owner, obviously the company, and I was like, nah, I need to be that motherfucker. I need to figure out how the fuck I'm gonna be in that fool's shoes, you know. And yeah, that's always been my mentality, bro. Like I always like want to be the man, you know. Like when I was locked up, I wanted everybody to fear me and for me to be the man, you know. And like when I got out to the real world and I saw shit like that, like I was like, I want to be that guy, you know what I'm saying? Like because when you're young and you're not guided the right way, you think that this is the way, you know. But I've always felt like in anything like that I've done, I've always wanted to be the man. If like not being cocky or anything like that, bro. It's just my attitude and the way I look at life. Like I want to be the guy, you know.
It's sometimes, I call it the way it's the way it's survival of the fittest, the way you're raised. You oftentimes you see somebody above you and you're like, hey, it's like how you said, you want to be in that guy's shoes, or you want to figure out how you can be that guy for, whatever you're going into. And I think there's definitely a lot of people that have that mindset, but man, you got a mindset and a motor like no other, Carlos. Anybody else that you want to thank before we hop off on this call here today and get this recording all underway? I know you got your teammate going over there at weigh-ins right now, so I want to give you some prompt time, but anybody else that you want to thank before we go ahead and end this call here today?
I just want to thank my team, Dave, my teammates like Raul, his parents, and just anybody that supports me. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. That's it, man. And I want to thank God, obviously, for giving me another day, another chance, and health to do what I love to do, and doing it because I love it, not because I need to do it. So I'm just blessed and I'm thankful. So thank you to everybody that supports me, everybody that is listening, anybody that's motivated out for this, or anybody that's going through a hard time. Like hard times don't last, like hard people do. So just keep that in mind. Like no matter what you're going through, like you're gonna get through it. So just keep pushing forward, and you'll eventually get out of the storm.
Pushing through, and
that's pretty much it, brother.
Hey, my man, always a great pleasure to have you on the program. Always welcome to have you on anytime, my man. Michael Hernandez, MLH Media, Uncensored, with my guy, Carlos Figueroa. We're going to be signing out.
Man, StreamYard just does not like me today, man. MLH Media Uncensored, Episode 3. I hope you really enjoyed those interviews from Jim West and Carlos Figueroa. It was an absolute pleasure getting to speak to both those gentlemen. Carlos Figueroa having that matchup over there at A1 Combat 25 on November 15th. Looking very much forward to that card. Hector Fajardo just got announced as the co-main event for that one, so really excited to get to watch not only Carlos, but also a couple of other bantamweights getting to go at it in that cage. Kevin Felipe and Nick Maximoff in that main event. But then we got, of course, Jim West, man. He's talking about Anthony Hernandez main event, possibly putting himself in the title contention. I know that Triscus Duplessis was a matchup that he had in the past, so possibly could be seeing Jim West in the corner for Anthony Hernandez in an upcoming big 2025 year for the middleweight star. And then, of course, Max Griffin taking on Michael Chiesa over there, UFC 310 in December. I think that's going to be one hell of a card. That actually may be a card I go to in person, just because, I think that card is full of stars. Like, you got Chase Hooper, you got so many guys on that card. Clay Guida, of course, another California resident, and Kaya Sakura, and Alexandria Pantoja in that main event, a fight that I've been speaking about at length on this video call today. Shavkat Rakhmonov and my boy Bilal Muhammad going at it in the main event as well. So you know that it'll be a very, very entertaining card overall. I really think that card will be pretty fun. And I mean, who knows? They may still possibly have a couple more fights to add on to that one. I think Joshua Van is also on that UFC 310 card. So very, very action-packed card for the fans coming in December. We still have another episode coming for you all next week. Make sure that if you are still here and you want to watch the interviews and you weren't able to watch them all live, they will be linked in the description below. They will be going live at 7 p.m. I always like to release interviews, give you guys a little bit of time to watch the full show if you possibly wanted to go ahead and tune into any of my takes on the UFC or any of those matters. But I really appreciate you all tuning in today. It was a great pleasure getting to speak to both Chiwiwiss and Carlos Figueroa, like how I said. Michael Hernandez, MLH Media, UnCensored, episode 3, going to be signing out.